My name is Juanita, 31 years old. If you asked Daniel, my boyfriend of 2 years, what our relationship looked like, he'd tell you we had passion, depth, intensity. If you asked me, I'd tell you it felt like living in a permanent waiting room, waiting for him to stabilize, waiting for his mood to even out, waiting for this promised best version of him that was always just around the corner. Daniel has always described himself as emotionally complex. That was his polished way of saying unpredictable. One day he'd be affectionate, planning vacations, talking about moving somewhere warmer, saying things like, "I've never felt this connected to anyone." The next day he'd go cold, snapping at me for breathing too loudly, accusing me of being negative because I asked a simple question. And every time I tried to talk about it, he would say I needed to be patient, that he was going through things, that his best self was coming once he healed from his past, once he found clarity, once he fixed his sleep schedule, once he figured himself out. I believed him for a long time. Last night, the argument started over something small. It always did. I'd worked late and asked if he could help clean up because I was exhausted. He didn't even look up from his phone, just sighed dramatically and said, "Why are you always so critical?" I told him I wasn't critical. I was tired. Tired of carrying the emotional load, tired of walking on eggshells, tired of feeling like my needs were inconvenient. That's when he stood up, crossed his arms, and delivered the line he clearly thought ended the conversation. "If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve my best." He said it confidently, almost smug, like it was wisdom instead of a warning. And something inside me shifted into focus. I didn't yell. I didn't insult him. I just looked at him and said quietly, "Your best has been coming for 2 years." His face went pale instantly, like the air had been sucked out of the room. He stared at me as if I'd betrayed him. Then he pivoted, accused me of being cruel, of being unsupportive, of attacking him during a hard time. He said I was supposed to be on his side. I asked him when my side was supposed to matter. He stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. I stayed on the couch, wide awake, staring at the ceiling as the night stretched thin. And for the first time in 2 years, I realized I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of keeping him. That distinction changed everything. I sat there thinking about every phase he promised would pass, every time he said things would get better once he got a new job, once he processed his past, once he figured himself out. His growth always required my patience and never his effort. Around 6 in the morning, he came out of the bedroom, arms crossed, jaw tight, waiting. "So," he said, "are you ready to apologize?" That was it. That was the moment the spell broke completely. He stood there in the kitchen like a judge waiting for a confession, arms crossed, chin slightly raised. That familiar expression that said he already knew how this would end, with me softening, me apologizing, me explaining that I didn't mean it like that. "So," Daniel repeated, "are you ready to apologize?" I looked at him for a long second, really looked at him, at the expectation in his eyes, at the certainty. "No," I said. The word landed quietly, but it changed the temperature of the room. He blinked. "Excuse me." Instead of answering, I walked past him into the bedroom. I could hear him following me, already mid-sentence about how relationships take work, about how I was overreacting, about how I always escalate things when he's vulnerable. I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. "What are you doing?" His voice sharpened immediately. "I'm done waiting for your best," I said, and started folding his clothes. He laughed at first, a short, disbelieving sound. "Juanita, stop, you're being dramatic." I didn't respond. I packed methodically. Shirts, jeans, the hoodie he borrowed from me and never returned. The gym shorts he said he'd start using once he got motivated again. Everything folded neatly in a way he never bothered to do. His laughter faded. "Stop," he said again, stepping closer. "You don't get to do this." I zipped the suitcase and reached for the second bag. "You can't just kick me out because you can't handle me," he snapped. I finally looked at him, calm and steady. "I've been handling you. That's the problem." That shut him up for half a second. He started pacing, voice rising with every step, accusing me of throwing away 2 years over one argument, saying I was proving I couldn't handle a real relationship, that couples fight and I was being childish by packing instead of talking. "We've talked," I said evenly. "Late nights, long walks, calm conversations that ended with me apologizing and you promising to do better soon. Soon never came." He scoffed. "You act like you're perfect." "I don't," I replied. "I act like I'm tired." That landed harder than I expected. He changed tactics then. Softer voice, slight tremble. I've been under a lot of stress. You know that. You're supposed to be my safe place. I am not responsible for stabilizing you, I said quietly. Your stress can't keep turning into my burden. He stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. Then came the insults. He said I was boring, predictable, that I'd never find someone who challenged me the way he did, that without him, my life would be small and quiet. He meant it as a threat. It sounded like peace. I picked up his wallet from the nightstand and placed it beside the suitcases. You should call someone to pick you up. His eyes widened. You're serious? I nodded. For the first time in 2 years, he looked afraid. Not of losing me, of losing control. He didn't scream immediately. That came later. At first, he just stood there, staring at the bags like they were props in a scene he hadn't rehearsed for. This is manipulative, he said finally. You're doing this to scare me. If I wanted to scare you, I said calmly, I'd still be arguing. That irritated him more than yelling would have. He paced faster. He told me I was cold, that I lacked empathy, that a good partner would try harder. I tried for 2 years, I said. That counts. He switched again. Tears now. Real ones this time. He said he felt abandoned, that everyone leaves when things get hard, that he thought I was different. I am different, I said softly. Different enough to know loving someone doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. That's when the anger surged back. He accused me of planning this, of holding on to that best comment just to weaponize it. He called me calculating. I walked to the front door, opened it, and placed the suitcases just outside. I tried, I said. I'm done proving that. The doorbell rang less than a minute later. His ride. He stood in the hallway staring at the open door like he expected me to flinch at the last second, to apologize, to say unpack. I didn't. He grabbed his bag slowly, paused in the doorway. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I thought. But as the door closed behind him, the apartment felt lighter. Not empty. Lighter. I didn't expect the aftermath to hit so fast. Within an hour of Daniel leaving, my phone started lighting up like I'd triggered some silent alarm. First his sister, then one of his friends I barely spoke to, then a mutual coworker who had absolutely no business knowing what happened inside my apartment at 6 a.m. Is it true you kicked him out? Juanita, that's kind of harsh. He said you blindsided him. Blindsided. I set my phone face down on the table and let it buzz itself tired. But curiosity got the better of me by evening. I opened social media. Big mistake. He'd already posted. Black background. White text. No names. No details. Just enough drama to invite speculation. When you give everything to someone and they abandon you at your lowest. I actually laughed, but not because it was funny. Because it was so predictable. Crisis. Sympathy. No accountability. Reset. Comments flooded in. You deserve better. Stay strong. She didn't appreciate you. He didn't lie outright. He just omitted context, which somehow felt worse. Around 10 p.m., he texted me directly. I can't believe you actually did this. I didn't respond. Another message. You humiliated me. Then, my mom is furious. Then the one that almost pulled something from me. I hope you're happy ruining someone you claim to love. That one hit for a second. Not because it was true, but because he believed it. I stared at the screen and asked myself something I hadn't asked in 2 years. How do I actually feel right now? The answer surprised me. Calm. Sad, yes, but calm. No pit in my stomach. No urge to fix it. No reflex to explain myself. I finally replied with one sentence. I didn't ruin you. I stopped enabling you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Then he called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Long, emotional, half apology, half accusation. He said he never thought I'd actually leave. That he assumed I'd cool off like always. That he was just being honest when he said those things. That part stuck with me. He had always been honest about how little effort he was willing to give. I had just translated it into hope. I deleted the voicemail. That night I slept through until morning without bracing for the next argument. No rehearsing conversations in my head. No analyzing tone shifts. Just sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke briefly and realized something that felt almost embarrassing in its simplicity. He never believed I would choose myself. That's why he was shocked. The next morning, the phone exploded again. Texts from mutual friends asking if I was okay. One from his sister that simply said, I thought you were better than this. Better than this. Better than having boundaries? Then a paragraph from his best friend explaining how Daniel was spiraling and maybe I should be the bigger person and reach out. That phrase again, be the bigger person. It always meant one thing. Fold. Apologize. Absorb. I didn't reply. Then Daniel texted again. I don't recognize you anymore. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, because it finally made sense. He didn't love who I was. He loved who I became when I was accommodating, patient, and willing to swallow my own discomfort to keep him steady. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I sent one line. You're right. I don't recognize myself either, and that's why this had to end. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he posted again, this time a selfie. Puffy eyes, caption about learning who really shows up when things get hard. The comments came fast. Support, validation, people cheering him on for surviving something they didn't understand. For the first time, it didn't make my chest tighten. What made me uncomfortable was how familiar the pattern looked. Crisis, sympathy, no accountability, reset, repeat. That afternoon, there was a knock at the door. My stomach tightened automatically. It wasn't him. It was his friend Mark, the one who always claimed he hated drama. He stood there awkwardly. I'm not here to yell, he said. He asked me to talk to you. I let him in. Mark didn't defend Daniel, didn't attack me either. She really didn't think you'd do it, he said quietly. I know. He hesitated. Honestly, I don't think she thought you could. After he left, I sat on the couch and let that sentence settle. He didn't think I could. She didn't think I would. Neither of them had ever factored in that I might. That night, around 11:30, Daniel texted again. I can come over. We should talk like adults. 5 minutes later. I'm not mad. I just want closure. 10 minutes after that. I left some important stuff there. Strategic. He knew I hated loose ends. I replied once. I'll put anything you forgot in a box. You can pick it up later. He called immediately. I declined. So you're just going to treat me like a stranger now? He texted. I set my phone down and didn't touch it again. For the first time in 2 years, the silence didn't feel tense. It felt clean. 2 days after I blocked him, I came home from work and found an envelope taped to my door. No stamp, no address. Just my name written in his careful handwriting, the neat version he used when he wanted to seem sincere. I stood there longer than I should have, keys still in my hand. Curiosity 1. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 full pages, front and back. He wrote about memories first, trips we took, inside jokes, the night we stayed up talking about the future like it was something we could design together. He reminded me of small details, the way I liked my coffee, the song I played on repeat that summer. It was tender, intentional, nostalgic. Then came the apology, but it wasn't specific. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. I'm sorry things got misunderstood. I'm sorry we both reacted badly. Nothing owned, nothing concrete. And then the pivot. He said he never felt safe being himself with me, that he always felt judged, that my expectations were too high and made him feel like he was constantly failing. He said my comment about his best humiliated him and confirmed his deepest fear, that he wasn't enough. That line almost worked. Almost. Until the final paragraph. He wrote that maybe one day, when I matured emotionally, I'd understand that loving someone means accepting their flaws without conditions. That if I reached out soon enough, maybe we could rebuild slowly. There it was, an invitation back into the same cycle, disguised as growth. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Not because it mattered, but because I didn't want loose ends floating around my apartment. That night, a mutual friend texted me. He's not doing great. He says you changed overnight. I stared at the message and felt something settle fully into place. I hadn't changed overnight. I just stopped explaining myself to someone who only listened when it benefited him. I replied politely that I hoped he'd be okay, but the relationship was over and I wasn't reopening it. No response. Later, I threw the envelope into the trash. And for a second, nostalgia tried to sneak in. Not love, habit, comfort, familiar chaos. I walked to the closet and opened it. His side was empty, except for a few forgotten hangers and a scarf shoved on the top shelf. I pulled it down. It still smelled like his cologne. For a moment, my chest tightened. Then I remembered how many mornings I'd woken up anxious, bracing for whatever mood he'd be in. How often I rehearsed conversations in my head before speaking. How my own home had stopped feeling safe long before it stopped being shared. I put the scarf in the box with the rest of his things. Around noon, he texted again from a new number. I can't believe you're really doing this. After everything I put up with from you. I actually laughed out loud. That sentence summarized the entire relationship. In his mind, loving me had been a favor, something he tolerated, something I owed him gratitude for. I typed, deleted, typed again. What I finally sent was simple. Please stop contacting me unless it's about picking up your things. His reply came instantly. Wow, cold. Guess I didn't deserve your best either. I stared at that message. Then I blocked that number too. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was quiet in the way a room feels after you finally turn off a machine that's been humming in the background for years. The next morning, I woke up expecting regret, the panic, the what did I just do spiral. It never came. Instead, I noticed the quiet. Not the tense quiet where you wait for the next mood shift. Neutral quiet. Open quiet. I made coffee without being criticized for how strong it was. I left a mug in the sink without bracing for a comment. I checked my phone and didn't feel that reflexive dread that I might have missed something I'd be punished for later. That's when it landed fully. I hadn't lost peace when he left. I'd gained it. A week later, someone told me he was still telling people I'd changed overnight. They were right. I had. I changed the moment I stopped confusing potential with effort. He loved to say, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve my best. What he never understood was that worst can't be permanent and best can't be theoretical. His best wasn't coming. It was a placeholder he used to justify how little he gave. Packing his bags wasn't cruel. It was honest. And for the first time in a long time, honesty didn't feel like a liability. It felt like freedom.